Rain hammered against the barn roof like 1,000 angry fists. Lily Summers had seen plenty of storms during her 3 years on Green Hollow, but this one carried an edge of violence that made even her uneasy. She pulled her coat tighter and checked the grain storage one last time before heading back to her house. That was when she heard the whimpering. The sound was soft, almost lost beneath the thunder, but unmistakable. Something alive and terrified was hiding in her barn. Lily froze, her hand moving instinctively to the plasma cutter on her belt. Wild animals sometimes sought shelter during storms, and not all of them were friendly. Another whimper, followed by a small, choked sob that Lily's posture shifted from defensive to concerned. Animals didn't cry like that. She moved deeper into the barn, following the sound to a corner stacked high with grain sacks. Behind them, pressed against the wall with wings wrapped tight around a trembling body, was a young dragon. Lily had seen plenty of Drathkai during her time on Green Hollow. They were the apex species on this planet, proud and fierce, with scales that could turn aside bullets and voices that could shake mountains. This little one had silver-blue scales that caught the dim light, but they were dull with fear and streaked with mud. Her wings, small and not yet fully developed, shook with each roll of thunder. "Hey there," Lily said softly, keeping her distance. "You're safe. It's just a storm." The dragon child's eyes snapped open, wide and terrified. She tried to press herself further into the wall, which was impossible. Her claws scraped against the floor. "Please don't send me back," the young dragon whispered in heavily accented human standard. "Not yet. Please." Lily crouched down, making herself smaller and less threatening. "I'm not sending anyone anywhere in this weather. What's your name?" "Kessa." The dragon's voice was barely audible. "I ran away from the storm flight." That explained a lot. Lily had heard about Drathkai training rituals. Young dragons were supposed to embrace danger, to fly through storms and laugh at lightning. It was how they proved themselves worthy of their heritage. "You don't like storms?" Lily asked gently. Kessa shook her head, and fresh tears rolled down her scaled snout. "I hate them. I hate the thunder and the lightning and the way the wind throws me around. I hate all of it, but I'm supposed to love it. I'm supposed to be brave." Another crack of thunder made Kessa flinch so hard she knocked over a grain sack. She curled into an even tighter ball, making sounds of pure distress. Lily understood that kind of fear. She understood it better than most people ever would. Moving slowly, she sat down on the floor a few feet away from Kessa, putting them at the same level. "I used to be a counselor," Lily said quietly. "Back on Earth before I came here. I helped people who were scared." Kessa lifted her head slightly. "Why did you come here?" "Because I was scared too. So scared that I couldn't do my job anymore." Lily had never told anyone in the colony that story. It felt right to tell it now. "I froze when people needed me. So I ran away, just like you're doing now." The dragon child studied her with ancient eyes that seemed far too old for such a young face. "You understand?" "Ido." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the storm rage outside. Lily didn't push, didn't demand answers. She simply existed in the same space as this frightened child, letting her presence be a quiet comfort. Finally, Kessa spoke again. "My clutch brothers and sisters flew into the storm. They roared at the lightning. My mother was so proud of them." Her voice cracked, but I couldn't. "I tried to follow them, but my wings wouldn't work right. My body just froze. So I ran." "How old are you?" Lily asked. 7 seasons. In human years, I think that's close to 7 of your years, too. Just a baby, really." Lily felt anger rising in her chest at a culture that demanded this kind of courage from someone so young. But she kept her voice calm. "What happens now?" Kessa's whole body seemed to deflate. "The council gave my family 3 moon cycles. I have to pass the courage trials, or I'll be exiled. Marked as defective. My family will lose status. My mother cries when she thinks I can't hear her." The weight of that burden on such small shoulders made Lily's heart ache. She thought about her next words carefully, knowing they might change everything. "Kessa, can I tell you something about humans?" The dragon nodded. "We're not the strongest species in the galaxy. We're not the fastest or the toughest. We don't have scales or claws or the ability to breathe fire. But we survived and spread across the stars anyway. Do you know how? Kessa shook her head. We learned to be brave in a different way. Not by ignoring our fear, but by acting despite it. Every human who climbed into a spaceship for the first time was terrified. Every soldier who ran toward danger felt their hands shake. But they did it anyway. That's what real courage is. The storm outside seemed to quiet slightly. Or maybe Lily was just focused entirely on the young dragon in front of her. Kessa uncurled a bit, her expression shifting from despair to something that might have been hope. But I feel the fear so strongly. It fills up everything. How can I act when I can barely breathe? That's what I can teach you, Lily said. If you want to learn. The dragon child looked at her for a long moment. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she asked the question that would bind them together. Can you teach me to be brave? Lily smiled, and for the first time in 3 years, she felt like maybe she had a purpose again. Bravery isn't about not being afraid, Kessa. Let me show you what it really means. Outside, the thunder rolled on, but inside the barn, something new was beginning. A human who had run from her fears and a dragon who couldn't escape hers had found each other. Together, they might discover that courage came in forms neither of their cultures had fully understood. Kessa slowly unfolded her wings and took a shaky breath. When do we start? Tomorrow, Lily said. After you've rested and the storm has passed. We'll take this one step at a time. The dragon nodded and settled more comfortably against the grain sacks. For the first time since the storm began, she didn't flinch at the thunder. She was still afraid, but now she wasn't alone with that fear. Lily stayed with her through the night, keeping watch while Kessa finally slept. The sun rose over Green Hollow's endless plains, painting everything in shades of gold and green. Kessa stood in Lily's vegetable garden, staring at a bucket of water like it might bite her. It's just rain, Lily said from her seat on the porch steps. Collected from last night's storm. I know what it is. Kessa's tail twitched nervously. I don't understand why I need to touch it. This was their 5th day of lessons, and progress came in tiny, painful increments. Lily had learned patience in her old life as a counselor, but watching Kessa struggle tested even her reserves. Tell me what you're afraid of, Lily said. It was the first step in every exercise. Name the fear that Kessa's claws dug small furrows in the dirt. The sound. When rain hits my scales, it sounds like the storm. It makes me remember. Remember what? The young dragon was quiet for a long moment, being thrown around in the wind, not being able to fly right. Falling and thinking I would hit the ground. Lily stood and walked over, but didn't touch the bucket herself. You didn't hit the ground, though. No, I caught myself at the last moment, but I still remember the fall. Kessa's voice was small. I remember feeling completely helpless. That's a reasonable thing to be afraid of, Lily said. Falling, losing control, those are real dangers. Your fear is trying to protect you. Kessa looked at her with confusion. But I need to get rid of the fear. No, Lily said firmly. You need to understand it. Fear is information, Kessa. It tells you something is dangerous. The trick is learning which fears are helping you and which ones are holding you back. She gestured at the bucket. This water can't hurt you. Your fear of it isn't protecting you from anything real. It's an echo of a bad memory. So we're going to teach your mind the difference. Kessa stared at the bucket for another long moment. Then, moving so slowly Lily could count each second, she extended one claw and touched the water surface. She flinched, pulled back, then touched it again. Her whole body was shaking. Good, Lily said quietly. That's good, Kessa. I'm terrified of a bucket of water, Kessa said, and there was disgust in her voice. How is this good? Because you touched it anyway. Lily sat back down on the steps. That's what courage looks like. Not the absence of fear, but action despite it. They spent another hour with the bucket. By the end, Kessa could put her whole claw in the water without flinching, though she still trembled. It was a small victory, but Lily celebrated it like a triumph. Later that afternoon, a shadow passed over the farm. Lily looked up to see an adult Drathkai circling overhead. The dragon was massive, easily 5 times Kessa's size, with deep emerald scales that caught the light like precious stones. Kessa made a sound of distress. My mother. The dragon landed in the field beyond the garden, her weight making the ground tremble. She approached with the fluid grace of an apex predator, but there was something desperate in her eyes. Kessa, the mother said, her voice like distant thunder. Then she looked at Lily. Human, I am Dressa of the third clutch. You have been teaching my daughter. It wasn't a question. Lily stood, keeping her posture respectful, but not submissive. I have. She's making progress. Dressa's eyes flicked to Kessa, who had partially hidden behind Lily despite being twice the human size. The mother's expression was complicated, mixing shame and love and frustration in equal measure. The courage trials are in 67 days, Dressa said. The council will not delay them. If Kessa fails, she trailed off, unable or unwilling to finish the sentence. She won't fail, Lily said with more confidence than she felt. She is broken, Dressa said bluntly. I have tried everything. Combat drills, exposure therapy, even the old songs that are supposed to awaken courage. Nothing works. She feels too much fear. Lily felt her temper flare. She's not broken. She's just afraid. For a Drathkai, those are the same thing. Dressa looked at her daughter with an expression that broke Lily's heart. It was the look of a mother watching her child drown and not knowing how to save her. Please, fix her. Teach her to be like other dragons. No, Lily said. Both dragons stared at her. I won't teach her to be like other dragons, Lily continued. I'm teaching her to be brave in her own way. The way humans learn to be brave. Dressa's eyes narrowed. Humans are not Drathkai. Your courage is different. Exactly, Lily said. And maybe that's what Kessa needs. The mother dragon looked between Lily and her daughter. Finally, she sighed, and smoke curled from her nostrils. The council will not care about human courage. They will test her by our standards. Then we'll meet their standards, Lily said. But we'll do it our way. Dressa studied her for a long time. Then she did something that clearly cost her pride. She lowered her massive head in a gesture of respect. I entrust her to you, human. Teach her what you can. I will keep the council from interfering. After Dressa left, Kessa was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, My mother thinks I'm broken. Your mother is scared, Lily corrected gently. She doesn't know how to help you, so she's looking for someone who can. That's not the same as thinking you're broken, isn't it? Lily thought about her own mother, who had tried so hard to understand why her daughter couldn't just get over her fear, why she couldn't just go back to work, why she had to run to another planet to feel safe again. Sometimes the people who love us don't understand what we need, Lily said. That doesn't mean they love us any less. That evening, they sat together and watched the sun set over the plains. Lily told Kessa about Earth, about human history, about all the times her species had faced impossible odds while terrified out of their minds. We went to space in tiny metal cans, Lily said. We had no idea if we'd survive. Our first astronauts were scared every single day, but they went anyway. Why? Kessa asked. Because the fear meant it mattered. If they weren't afraid, it wouldn't have been brave. Kessa thought about that. So my fear means I can be brave? Your fear means you have the opportunity to be brave, Lily corrected. Every single time you're afraid and you do something anyway, that's courage. Your brothers and sisters who don't feel fear, they're just doing things. You're being brave. For the first time, Kessa looked at her fear differently, not as a flaw to be eliminated, but as a measure of her courage. Tomorrow, Lily said, we're going to start flight training. Kessa's eyes widened with panic, but beneath the panic there was something else, something that might have been determination. Okay, she whispered. I'll try. That's all I'm asking, Lily said. Just keep trying. Above them, the first stars were appearing in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there were humans who had been just as afraid as Kessa, who had conquered their fears not by eliminating them, but by acting despite them. Kessa was going to learn their secret, one terrifying step at a time. 3 weeks into training, and Kessa had learned to do things that terrified her. She could stand in the rain without panicking. She could touch fire with her claws and not flee. She could even fly short distances when the wind picked up, though her wings still trembled with every gust. But today's challenge was different. Lily stood at the base of the old windmill field, looking up at the towering structures that dotted the landscape. The colony used them to generate power, and when the wind was strong like today, their massive blades cut through the air with enough force to be dangerous. "You want me to fly through that?" Kessa said flatly. "The courage trials will have something similar," Lily said. "You need to practice navigating obstacles while in flight." Kessa sat down hard, her tail curling around her feet. "I can't." They had been here before, at this wall where fear became too solid to push through. Lily sat down next to her, letting the silence stretch between them. "Tell me what you're afraid of," Lily said finally. "Getting hit. Falling. The blades are so fast, and if I don't time it right, they'll knock me out of the sky." Kessa's voice was steady, but her claws were digging trenches in the ground. "I'll fall, and I won't be able to catch myself, and I'll just hit the ground and break." "Those are real dangers," Lily acknowledged. "Your fear is giving you good information. Those blades could hurt you if you mess up. Then why are we doing this? Because the trials will be just as dangerous, and you need to know you can handle it." Lily stood and brushed dirt off her pants. "But we're going to be smart about it. We're not going to just throw you in and hope for the best." She pulled out a small device from her pocket. It was a remote controller for the windmills. With a few button presses, she slowed the nearest windmill's blades to a crawl. "We start slow," Lily said. "We start safe. Then we build up." Relief flooded Kessa's features. "Oh, I thought you were going to make me just do it." "That's the Drathkai way," Lily said. "Throw hatchlings into danger and expect them to adapt. But humans learn that you build courage like you build muscle. Slowly, with progressive challenges." Kessa approached the slow-moving blades. Even at reduced speed, they were intimidating. She took a running start and launched herself into the air, her wings catching an updraft. The first pass was clumsy, but she made it through the gap between blades without incident. "Good," Lily called up. "Again." They spent 2 hours on that one windmill. Lily gradually increased the blade speed, and Kessa adjusted. She was still afraid. Lily could see it in the way her wings stuttered and how she sometimes circled twice before committing to a pass. But she kept going to by the end. The blades were at half speed, and Kessa was navigating through them with something approaching confidence. "That's enough for today," Lily said when she noticed Kessa's flight becoming erratic with exhaustion. Kessa landed heavily, breathing hard. "I did it. You did. I'm proud of you." Those simple words made Kessa's eyes shine. Lily wondered how often anyone told this young dragon they were proud of her. They were walking back to the farm when Lily's communicator buzzed. It was Hal, one of the colony's perimeter guards. "Lily, we've got a situation." Plasma elk herd moving toward the southern fields. "Big one. We got families with kids out there for the harvest." Lily's blood went cold. Plasma elk were usually docile, but in large herds they could be deadly. Their antlers generated electrical fields that could stun or kill, and when they stampeded, nothing short of heavy weapons could stop them. "I'm on my way," Lily said. Then to Kessa, "Stay here. This could get dangerous." But Kessa was already looking toward the southern fields, her enhanced vision picking out details Lily couldn't see. "I can see them. There are so many, and there are little humans in the field. The colony guards will handle it," Lily said, but even she didn't sound convinced. The guard were farmers, not soldiers. They had basic weapons, but against a herd that size, Kessa took 3 steps toward the fields, then froze. Lily could see the war happening inside her. Every instinct screamed at her to run away from danger. But there were children in that field. "Kessa, you don't have to do anything," Lily said quickly. "This isn't your responsibility, but I can help." Kessa's voice was shaking. "I can fly faster than you can run. I can warn them." "You're terrified," Lily said gently. "I know." Kessa spread her wings, and they were trembling so badly it seemed impossible she could fly at all. "But you said courage is being afraid and acting anyway, right?" Lily felt her throat tighten. "Right." Kessa launched herself into the air with a cry that was half determination and half terror. She flew toward the southern fields, her flight path wobbling but determined. Lily started running, but she knew she wouldn't make it in time. From the air, Kessa could see everything. The herd was massive, hundreds of plasma elk moving together, their antlers crackling with building energy. They weren't aggressive, just frightened by something. But that didn't matter. Frightened herbivores were just as deadly as predators. In the field below, she could see 5 small humans. Children picking vegetables with their parents. They hadn't noticed the danger yet. Kessa's every instinct screamed at her to turn around, to flee to safety, to let someone else handle this. Her wings wanted to carry her away from danger, not toward it. Her heart was beating so fast she thought it might explode, but she thought about Lily's words. About human astronauts who were terrified and went to space anyway. About soldiers with shaking hands who stood their posts. About every frightened person who got out of bed and faced another day. She dove, not in the aggressive display of dominance a typical Drathkai would use. Kessa didn't roar or try to intimidate the herd. Instead, she landed between the children and the approaching elk, spread her wings wide, and did something no dragon had ever done in this situation. She held her ground while shaking with fear and called out in a loud, clear voice that carried across the field. "Run! Get to safety! Now!" The children looked up, saw her and the approaching herd beyond, and ran. Their parents grabbed them and fled toward the colony buildings. Meanwhile, Kessa stood there, legs locked, wings spread, making herself as big and visible as possible to give the families time to escape. The lead elk saw her and shifted direction slightly, the herd following. They weren't trying to attack her. They were just avoiding the obstacle. But some of the peripheral animals came close, their antlers sparking with energy. Kessa wanted to fly away so badly she could taste it. Every fiber of her being screamed that she should abandon this position and save herself. But she held her ground until every human was clear, until the herd had passed by and continued toward the open plains where they wouldn't hurt anyone. Only then did she collapse, shaking so hard her scales rattled. Lily arrived minutes later, out of breath from running. She found Kessa on the ground, crying but unhurt. "You did it," Lily said, kneeling beside her. "Kessa, you saved them." "I was so scared," Kessa sobbed. "I thought I was going to die. I thought they were going to trample me, and I was so scared." "I know," Lily said softly, "but you did it anyway. That's the bravest thing I've ever seen. I didn't fight them. I didn't roar or attack. I just stood there shaking." "You protected those children," Lily said firmly. "You felt your fear, and you chose to act. That's courage, Kessa. That's real courage." The young dragon looked up at her with tear-streaked eyes. "Is that enough?" For the trials. Lily thought about the Drathkai Council, about their rigid definitions of bravery and strength. She thought about how they would view a dragon who trembled while being brave. "I don't know," she admitted, "but it's enough for me. And it was more than enough for those families you saved." As they walked back to the farm, Kessa seemed different somehow. Still afraid, still trembling from the aftermath of her choice. But there was something new in her eyes, an understanding that her fear didn't make her weak. It made her brave. The night before the courage trials, Kessa couldn't sleep. She had tried lying down in the special shelter Lily had built for her beside the farmhouse. She had tried breathing exercises and counting stars and all the calming techniques Lily had taught her. Nothing worked. Finally, she gave up and walked to Lily's house. Through the window, she could see the human sitting at her kitchen table, staring at a cup of tea that had long since gone cold. Kessa tapped gently on the door with one claw. Lily opened it immediately, as if she had been waiting. "Couldn't sleep either?" "No." Kessa's voice was small. "Can we talk?" "Of course." Lily grabbed a blanket and they went outside, settling on a hill behind the house where they could see the stars. The night was clear and cool, and in the distance, Kessa could see the lights of the Drathkai, proving grounds where tomorrow would determine everything. They sat in silence for a while, both lost in their own thoughts. "I'm going to fail," Kessa said finally. "I know I am." Lily didn't immediately contradict her, which somehow made Kessa feel better. Hollow reassurances would have been worse than honesty. "You might," Lily said eventually. "The trials are designed to be brutal. Even dragons without your challenges sometimes fail. Then why do we do all this?" Kessa felt tears building behind her eyes. Why spend all this time training if I'm just going to fail anyway and bring shame to my family forever? Because failure isn't the end, Lily said quietly. And because you needed to learn that being afraid doesn't mean you can't be brave. Kessa turned to look at her. Tell me the rest of your story. The part you haven't told me yet. Lily was quiet for a long moment. Then she started talking. I was a first responder, part of a crisis team that handled emergencies. Building collapses, fires, disasters. I was good at my job. Really good. I help a lot of people. She paused, her hands clenching around the blanket. Then there was an apartment fire. Old building, lots of families inside. I was first on scene. Kessa listened, not interrupting. I could hear them screaming inside. I could see the flames spreading. And I just froze. Lily's voice was flat, emotionless in the way of someone who had told this story to themselves too many times. My team arrived 2 minutes later, but those 2 minutes mattered. By the time they got people moving, 3 families were trapped. 5 people died. 2 were children. That wasn't your fault, Kessa said. Wasn't it? If I had acted, if I had pushed through my fear like I was trained to do, maybe they would have lived. Maybe those 2 minutes would have been enough. Lily looked up at the stars. I couldn't go back after that. Every time I tried to suit up, I'd remember their screams. I'd freeze again. So I quit, ran away to the furthest colony I could find, and told myself I was looking for peace. You were looking to hide, Kessa said softly. I was. Just like you ran from the storm that day. Lily smiled, but it was sad. We're both runners, you and I. Both so afraid of our fear that we let it control us. But you've been teaching me to be brave, Kessa protested. How can you teach me if you're still running? Because teaching you has been teaching me, Lily said. Every time you face your fear and act anyway, every time you tremble and do the thing that terrifies you, you're showing me it's possible. You're braver than I ever was, Kessa. I'm not brave. I'm terrified all the time. That's exactly what makes you brave. Lily turned to face her fully. Those people I worked with, the other first responders, most of them weren't afraid. They just did the job without thinking about it. But me? I felt every moment of fear. And for years, I let that fear win. You don't. You feel the fear, and you act anyway. Kessa thought about that. I still might fail tomorrow. You might, Lily agreed. But Kessa, you've already succeeded at something more important. You've learned that your fear doesn't define you. Your actions do. The council won't care about that, Kessa said bitterly. They'll only care that I was shaking and crying through every challenge. Then the council is wrong, Lily said fiercely. Your people have forgotten something important. They've forgotten that courage without fear is just recklessness. Real courage, the kind that matters, only exists when you're afraid. She reached into her pocket and pulled out something small. It was a badge, worn and scratched. Kessa could just make out the words emergency services and a symbol she didn't recognize. This was mine, Lily said. I've carried it for 3 years as a reminder of my failure. But I want you to have it now. Why? Because it's also a reminder that failure isn't the end. That being broken doesn't mean you can't heal. That running away doesn't mean you can never go back. Lily pressed the badge into Kessa's claw. And because you've taught me something I needed to learn. You've taught me that the bravest thing we can do is try again, even when we're terrified of failing. Kessa looked at the small piece of metal in her claw. It was warm from being in Lily's pocket. What if I let you down tomorrow? You won't, Lily said. But Kessa, I need you to promise me something. What? If you fail tomorrow, if the council rejects you, promise me you won't give up on yourself. Promise me you'll remember that your worth isn't determined by their standards. Promise me you'll keep being brave in your own way. Kessa felt tears rolling down her snout. That's hard to promise. I know, but promise me anyway. Only if you promise something too, Kessa said. Promise me that when I come back from the trials, win or lose, you'll stop hiding. You'll face whatever you've been running from. Now it was Lily's turn to look afraid. But she nodded. Okay, we're in this together. They shook on it, human hand clasped around dragon claw. Both of them terrified of tomorrow, but facing it together. Can I tell you something? Kessa asked after a while. Anything. I'm not just scared of failing. I'm scared of succeeding too. Lily looked surprised. Why? Because if I pass the trials, they'll expect me to be brave all the time. They'll expect me to be like the other dragons. And I'm not. I'm always going to be afraid. I'm always going to feel things too much. Kessa's voice broke. What if I pass tomorrow and then fail at everything else? What if this is the only brave thing I ever do? Oh, Kessa, Lily said gently. Being brave isn't a one-time thing. It's a choice you make over and over again, every single day. Some days you'll make the brave choice, and some days you won't. That's being alive. That's being real. Your people understand that, Kessa said. Mine don't. Then maybe it's time they learned. Lily stood and offered her hand. Come on. You need to try to sleep, even if it's just a little. Tomorrow is going to be hard. They walked back to the farmhouse together. At the door, Kessa paused. Lily, thank you for everything, for seeing me when everyone else just saw something broken. You were never broken, Lily said. You were just afraid. There's a difference. Kessa went to her shelter and lay down, clutching Lily's old badge in her claw. Through the walls, she could hear Lily moving around in the house. Neither of them would sleep much tonight, but somehow, knowing she wasn't alone made the fear more bearable. Tomorrow she would face the courage trials. Tomorrow she would either prove herself or fail spectacularly. But tonight, she had learned something more valuable than any trial could teach. She had learned that courage wasn't about being fearless. It was about being terrified and showing up anyway. It was about trembling and still taking the next step. It was about feeling everything and choosing to act despite it all. Whether the council understood that or not, Kessa knew it was true, and that truth would have to be enough to carry her through whatever came next. Outside, the stars wheeled overhead, and the proving grounds waited in the darkness. Ready or not, dawn was coming. Dawn broke over the proving grounds like a hammer strike. Kessa stood at the entrance, surrounded by hundreds of Drathkai who had come to witness the courage trials. Her clutch siblings were there, already proven and proud. Her mother stood apart, unable to meet her eyes. The shame of having a defective child was written in every line of her posture. Lily stood with a small group of humans who had come to support Kessa. They were the only ones who looked at the young dragon with anything resembling hope. The trials took place in a natural arena, a canyon carved by ancient rivers and modified by Drathkai engineers to create the ultimate test of courage. Overhead, storm generators hummed, ready to create artificial weather. Below, various hazards waited. High Counselor Rolf emerged from the gathering, his scales so dark they were almost black, marked with scars from centuries of battles. He looked at Kessa with open disdain. The defective one presents herself, he announced, his voice carrying across the canyon. Let us see if human teaching has accomplished what proper Drathkai training could not. Kessa felt her legs begin to shake. Lily caught her eye from the crowd and gave a small nod. Just that simple gesture helped. The first trial, Rolf declared. The Thunder Flight. Storm generators activated with a roar. Within seconds, the canyon was filled with artificial lightning and driving rain. Wind howled through the space, creating turbulence that even experienced flyers would find challenging. You will navigate the canyon during the storm, Rolf said. If you turn back, you fail. Begin. Kessa approached the edge of the canyon and looked down into the chaos of wind and lightning. Every instinct she possessed screamed at her to run. Her wings trembled. Her claws dug into the stone beneath her feet. She thought about Lily's badge, tucked safely into a small pouch around her neck. She thought about human astronauts climbing into metal cans and flying into the void. She thought about soldiers with shaking hands standing their posts. She stepped off the edge. The wind hit her immediately, throwing her sideways. Lightning flashed, so close she could smell the ozone. Rain battered her scales with the sound she hated most in the world. She wanted to fold her wings and drop, to end this torture, but she didn't. Her flight was clumsy and terrified. She cried out with each lightning strike. Her wings stuttered and she dropped several times, only barely catching herself. The watching dragons murmured with disapproval. This was not how a proper Drathkai flew, but she made it through the canyon. When she landed on the other side, she was shaking so badly She could barely stand. But she had done it. The second trial, Rolf announced without acknowledging her success. The fire walk. A path had been laid with actual flames, burning hot enough that even dragon scales would feel the heat. Kessa had to walk through it slowly, proving she could face pain without flinching. She approached the flames and felt panic rising in her throat. Fire didn't scare her the way storms did, but the heat was intense and the path was long. She thought about the bucket of water, her first small victory, about building courage one terrifying step at a time. She walked into the flames that it hurt. Not enough to damage her scales, but enough to make every step an act of will. She whimpered with each pace forward, tears evaporating as they fell. The watching crowd saw weakness. Lily saw courage. Kessa completed the fire walk. The third trial, Rolf said, and now there was interest in his voice. He hadn't expected her to make it this far. The apex stand. A cage was opened, and a razor wolf emerged. The creature was all teeth and claws and murder, bred for hunting and killing. In the trial, the young dragon was supposed to face it without weapons, roaring and displaying dominance until the wolf submitted or fled. Kessa looked at the approaching predator and felt her body lock up. This was different from storms or fire. This was something that could actually kill her. The razor wolf circled her, sensing fear. It growled, testing her. A proper Drathkai would have roared back, would have made themselves bigger and more threatening that Kessa's legs were shaking so badly she thought they might give out. Her wings were clamped to her sides. She couldn't roar. She couldn't attack. She could barely breathe. But she didn't run. She stood there, terrified beyond words, and held her ground. Not with dominance or aggression, just with the quiet determination to not let her fear make her flee. The wolf circled again, confused by prey that didn't run but also didn't fight. Finally, the handlers called the wolf back. Kessa had stood her ground, barely, trembling and crying, but she had done it. The final trial, Rolf announced. The Void Leap. This was the test Kessa had dreaded most. A cliff overlooking rapids far below. She had to dive from the top and pull up before hitting the water, proving her flight control and nerve. Kessa stood at the edge and looked down. The drop was terrifying. The rocks below were sharp. If she didn't pull up in time, she would die. She thought about falling during the storm, about that moment of helplessness. This was asking her to experience that moment voluntarily. She stood there for a long time. Too long. The crowd began to murmur. Some called for her to be disqualified for hesitation. Lily watched, unable to help, her hands clenched so tight her nails drew blood. Kessa stepped back from the edge. The crowd erupted in disappointed sounds. She had failed, but then she took a running start and launched herself over the cliff. The fall was everything she feared. The wind rushed past, the rocks approached, and for a moment she was back in that storm, falling and helpless. But this time, she spread her wings and pulled up hard, skimming just above the water before climbing back to the cliff top. She had done it. All of it. Kessa landed and collapsed, shaking and crying and completely overwhelmed. She had completed every trial, but she had done it wrong by Drathkai standards. She had shown fear at every turn. She had whimpered and cried and trembled. The council gathered to deliberate. Kessa could hear them arguing. Some said she had completed the trials and should pass. Others said she showed weakness unbecoming of their kind. Finally, Rolf approached. You completed every challenge, he said, but without honor, without the fearless pride our people demand. You cried. You trembled. You showed weakness at every opportunity. Kessa nodded, unable to speak. Therefore, Rolf began. Wait. Lily's voice cut through the gathering. She pushed forward, breaking protocol. You're wrong. The crowd went silent. A human challenging the High Counselor was unheard of. You witnessed the greatest courage I have ever seen. Lily continued, her voice steady despite the hundreds of predatory eyes on her. She felt every fear you expect your warriors to ignore, and she acted anyway. That is strength you cannot comprehend. Human, you overstep, Rolf growled. Doi. Lily stepped closer, unafraid. You value fearlessness. But fearlessness is not courage. It's just the absence of fear. Kessa felt overwhelming terror at every trial and completed them anyway. That is courage. That is strength. What would you know of Drathkai honor? Rolf demanded. I know that my species conquered the stars while terrified, Lily said. I know we face creatures stronger and faster than us every day. I know we survive because we're brave enough to be afraid. You've forgotten that courage and fear go together. You've made fearlessness your god, and you've lost something precious because of it. The silence that followed was deafening. Kessa watched, hardly daring to breathe, as Lily stood up for her in front of everyone who had ever called her broken. The tension in the proving grounds was thick enough to cut. Rolf stared at Lily with eyes that had seen centuries of battle. The humans stared back, refusing to be intimidated. Then the alarm sounded. It was a deep, urgent wail that cut through everything. Colony emergency. Every head turned toward the southern plains where a massive dust cloud was rising. Plasma elk, someone shouted. Thousands of them. Lily's blood went cold. The herd from before had been maybe 300 animals. This looked 10 times that size, and they were moving fast, displaced by something, running in pure panic toward both the human colony and the edge of Drathkai territory. Rolf spread his wings. Warriors, to the sky. We will turn the herd. Dozens of adult dragons took flight, their powerful wings carrying them toward the stampede. They dove and roared, using the traditional Drathkai method of intimidation and dominance to redirect threats. But the herd didn't respond. The animals were too panicked, their eyes wild with terror. When the dragons dove at them, they scattered in more dangerous directions. Some split off toward the colony's main settlement. Others headed for a ravine where young Drathkai were training. It's not working, someone yelled. Rolf roared in frustration and dove again, trying to force the herd to turn through sheer dominance. But panic doesn't respond to intimidation. The herd fractured into smaller groups, each one moving toward populated areas. Kessa stood frozen, watching the chaos. Then something clicked in her mind. She understood this panic. She knew what it felt like to be so afraid that you couldn't think, couldn't respond to threats or commands. She had lived in that state of terror. While the powerful Drathkai tried to use force, Kessa understood what the herd actually needed. Lily, she called out. I have an idea, but I need help. Lily ran to her without hesitation. What do you need? I need the humans to trust me. Can you get them to follow my lead? Lily didn't ask questions. She grabbed her communicator and started calling every colonist she could reach. Listen to Kessa. Do exactly what she says. Kessa took a shaky breath and launched herself into the air. Her wings still trembled. Her heart still raced with fear. But she flew toward the stampede anyway. She didn't attack or intimidate. Instead, she flew ahead of the largest group and began to sing. It was a low, resonant sound, the same kind of calming noise Lily had taught her to use for managing her own panic. A sound meant to soothe, not frighten. Humans, she called down. I need lights. Gentle lights to guide them. And sounds, soft sounds, not loud ones. The colonists understood. They grabbed glow sticks and lanterns, creating a path of light. Some played music from their devices. Nothing aggressive or startling. Just gentle guidance. Kessa flew low and slow, still singing her calming song, leading the panicked animals away from danger toward the open plains. She was terrified the entire time. The thundering hooves below could trample her if she fell. The sheer number of animals was overwhelming. But she kept singing, kept flying, kept showing the herd a path to safety instead of trying to force them. Other humans joined in, understanding what she was trying to do. They created a corridor of light and sound, guiding rather than pushing. Slowly, impossibly, it worked. The scattered groups began to follow Kessa's lead. She flew for miles, her wings aching, her voice growing hoarse, but she didn't stop. Behind her, the humans maintained their gentle guidance. The Drathkai warriors watched in amazement as this small, frightened dragon accomplished what their power and dominance could not. Rolf flew alongside Kessa, not interfering, just witnessing that IT took hours. By the time the last of the herd was safely in the open plains, far from any settlements, Kessa was exhausted. She landed in a field and collapsed, too tired to even tremble. Rolf landed beside her. The ancient dragon was silent for a long time, just looking at this young one who had done the impossible. "You did not fight them," he said finally. "No," Kessa managed to say through her exhaustion. They were already fighting their own fear. They needed guidance, not more threats. "We have always used strength to solve problems," Rolf said slowly. "Force and dominance. It is the Drathkai way." "It's a way," Kessa said, "but not the only way." The High Counselor was quiet again. Then he did something unprecedented. He bowed his head to the young dragon. "I have lived for 3 centuries," Rolf said. "I have seen countless trials of courage, but I have never seen what you did today. You completed the traditional trials while terrified, and then you saved both our peoples using a kind of courage I did not know existed." Kessa looked up at him, hardly believing what she was hearing. "You understand fear in a way we have forgotten," Rolf continued. "You did not conquer it or eliminate it. You worked with it, through it. That," he paused, searching for words, "that may be a greater strength than fearlessness." Lily arrived, running across the field. She dropped to her knees beside Kessa. "Are you okay?" "I'm tired," Kessa said, "but I'm okay." More Drathkai landed around them. The council gathered, and for once, there was no judgment in their eyes. Only wonder. "The trial is concluded," Rolf announced. "Kessa of the Third Clutch has not only passed the courage trials, but has demonstrated a form of courage we did not know to test for. She has shown us that our understanding of bravery was incomplete." Dressa, Kessa's mother, pushed through the crowd. She looked at her daughter with tears streaming down her scaled face. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I thought you were broken. I couldn't see that you were just different." Kessa leaned into her mother's embrace. "I'm still afraid, Mother. I always will be." "I know," Dressa said, "but now I understand that's not a weakness. It's what makes you strong." The council made a formal declaration. Kessa would not just pass the trials. She would be honored with a new role in Drathkai society. She would serve as a bridge between their people and others, teaching the lessons she had learned about fear and courage. Later, as the sun set over Green Hollow, Kessa and Lily sat together on their hill. The young dragon was officially recognized now, accepted by her people, no longer considered defective. "You kept your promise," Lily said. "You didn't give up on yourself." "Now it's your turn," Kessa said gently. "You promised that when I came back from the trials, you would stop hiding." Lily was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled out her communicator and made a call she had been avoiding for 3 years. To her old commander, to the people she had left behind. "This is Lily Summers," she said when they answered. "I need to talk to you about what happened. About that fire. About everything." Kessa listened as Lily finally stopped running from her past. It was hard. Lily cried. Her voice shook, but she did it anyway. When the call ended, Lily looked drained but lighter somehow. "How do you feel?" Kessa asked. "Terrified," Lily admitted, "but ready. You taught me that." "We taught each other," Kessa corrected. They sat together as the stars came out, a human and a dragon who had both learned that courage wasn't about being fearless. It was about being afraid and showing up anyway. It was about feeling everything and choosing to act despite it all. Weeks later, young dragons and even some adults began coming to Kessa with a question she knew well. "Can you teach me to be brave?" And each time, she would respond with the words that had changed her life. Bravery isn't about not being afraid. Let me show you what it really means. She would teach them about humans, about a species that conquered the stars while terrified, about soldiers with shaking hands and astronauts with racing hearts, about first responders who froze and learned to move again, about every frightened person who got out of bed and faced another day. She taught them that fear was not the enemy. Fear was information. Fear was honest. And courage was the choice to act despite fear, not the absence of it. The Drathkai culture began to shift, slowly at first. They didn't abandon their values of strength and honor, but they added something new, an understanding that vulnerability could be powerful, that admitting fear took its own kind of courage. that the bravest warriors were often the ones who were most afraid. Kessa still felt fear every day. She probably always would. The storm still scared her. Heights still made her nervous. Loud noises still made her flinch. But now she understood that none of that made her weak. It made her brave. Every time she felt afraid and acted anyway, she was choosing courage. And that choice, made over and over again, day after day, was worth more than any fearlessness could ever be. Lily stayed on Green Hollow, but she stopped hiding. She started training others in trauma counseling, helping both humans and Drathkai work through their fears. She learned to forgive herself for freezing that day, understanding finally that her perceived failure had given her unique wisdom. Together, they created something new, a place where being afraid was okay, where courage meant acknowledging fear rather than denying it, where strength came from choosing to act despite trembling hands and racing hearts. And whenever a young dragon whispered the question that had started everything, "Can you teach me to be brave?" both Kessa and Lily were there to answer. Yes, they would say. We can teach you that bravery isn't about not being afraid. It's about being terrified and choosing to act anyway. It's about feeling your fear, honoring it, and then choosing what to do next. That's the human way. That's true courage. And one by one, fearful dragons and frightened humans learned that their fear didn't define them. Their courage did. The courage to try despite the terror. The courage to fail and try again. The courage to admit they were afraid and show up anyway. That was the lesson that changed everything. Not just for Kessa, but for everyone who learned it. Courage and fear were not opposites. They were partners. And the bravest hearts were often the ones that trembled the most.